You f***head, that video has cost so many lives! The way humans craft opinions fascinates me. So many of us are willing to hold firm beliefs amid a total lack of evidence to support them. You're probably expecting me to take a couple cheap shots here, and I could, but I often find myself thinking backwards just like anybody else. So what do I mean when I say backwards thinking? Smart thinkers let observation and reasoning lead to their conclusions. Backwards thinkers conclude first, then grasp at whatever evidence or reasoning they can to fit that preconceived conclusion, even if they have to make evidence up. Over the last few months on my channel, there's one very common backwards thought that just won't quit. The idea that comedy, and specifically comedy videos on YouTube, cause suicide. Here are some example comments. You f***head, that video has cost so many lives. YouTube videos cost lives, you say. I guess I missed that stat in the analytics. No, I don't really see it in here. Oh, it's all the way down at the bottom. Damn, this video is savage. It's not comedy because it could literally cause mass suicide across the globe. So the prospect of suicide removes a piece of art from its category? It's not a song because it could cause suicide? It's not a drama because it could cause suicide? It's not a painting because it could cause suicide? I seriously don't even get it.
People have committed suicide because of fat shaming, you stupid motherfucker. I don't think shaming anyone is right. I think it's wrong.
Except, of course, for shaming stupid YouTube motherfuckers like me. This last one is my favorite. I see you've made a claim that YouTube videos cause suicide. Can you cite one example of a suicide caused by a comedy routine? You know nobody compiles information on the number of suicides caused by videos online. But the extent that it can motivate others to torment a kid and lead to suicide is pretty obvious. So to be clear, you have zero evidence, but your point is obvious. Also, I didn't ask you for compiled information. I didn't ask you for data. I asked you for one example, one story, one anecdote. You can't produce even that, but your point is obvious. Okay, we've got two big problems here, two problems beyond the total lack of evidence in support of these claims. Problem one is what evidence we can observe points not to a gigantic stack of YouTube bodies, but actually to none. And problem two is that even as a theoretical matter, the idea that YouTube videos are causing suicide is counter to just plain old nothing fancy garden variety common sense. Now that last commenter is right. Nobody really collects information on what causes each individual suicide. And that's because suicide is almost always a very complex issue without one single obviously identifiable cause. But one thing we can look at is suicide rates over time. Well, in the US, we have seen a very modest increase in suicide rates over the last decade. According to CDC data, suicide rates today are lower than they were in 1990, 1980, in every decade, all the way back to the 1950s. These data show about 40,000 people took their own lives in 2014. If, as these commenters claim, there is some mysterious stack of YouTube bodies that is hundreds or thousands deep, that would be a population significant enough to make a noticeable change in this trend line. If these YouTube-caused mass suicides were happening, we'd expect to see a data trend like this. US suicide rates remained stable in the early years of the new millennium. That is until the dark days of 2005. When YouTube launched. But of course, these commenters aren't persuaded by data. They can't be bothered to observe evidence. They'd rather just speculate and fantasize instead. But does their speculation even make sense? Regardless of whether it happens in reality or not, does the idea of a YouTube video causing suicide even make sense? The fundamental flaw in the reasoning from these commenters is conflating criticism and comedy with bullying and harassment. Bullying and harassment require targeting a specific person or group of people with threatening messages that that person or group can't easily avoid. General criticism of a person or a group of people posted online, whether it's intended to be funny or not, cannot be considered the same thing as a threat or as harassment, and thus by extension cannot reasonably be called a cause of suicide. Look, I just gotta get something off my chest. I watched Jumanji, the movie, a few years back, and I didn't really like it, and In my blog, I made a couple posts about how I thought the movie sucked. So, what happened with Robin Williams? That's on me. No! You can't opt in to harassment. That's what makes it harassment. You can't be bullied by a message that you have to seek out yourself and view voluntarily. If you want to call a YouTube video bullying, this isn't the bully pursuing you and stuffing you into a locker. This is you making an appointment with the bully and asking to be stuffed in the locker. Ultimately, it's so strange to me that someone would make the argument that comedy costs lives. Stranger still that someone would say that the causal relationship between comedy and death is obvious. Everything in my life experience suggests the opposite. That comedy saves lives. That comedy makes life worth living. That a joke and a smile are forces counter to those forces that cause suicide. I've had some dark days in my life, as I'm sure you, the viewer, have as well. When I think of those dark days, I think of jokes with my friends that help to make everything okay. I think of losses so heavy that jokes and laughter are the only way I can process them and pull through them. I think of laughter as the single most convincing reason that tomorrow is worthwhile. So when you say comedy costs lives, and when you propose silencing comedy as a means of saving people, consider that testimony. Consider your own experience and ask yourself if less comedy, less jokes, less laughter would have made things better. Consider that and ask yourself if what you're advocating is truly humanitarian. Get back to me. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate the thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Twitter, that is @skag_3. You're always welcome to come hang out and chat in my live stream as well. That's linked in the description. Looking forward to it. Okay, bye.